The sky above the northern hemisphere did not just darken that night, it tore open. It was not a storm of clouds and rain, but a violent atmospheric bruising, a streak of violet and burning orange that screamed across the mesosphere. To the few satellites still functioning after the solar flare cascades of the previous week, it registered as a piece of space debris with an impossible trajectory. To the forest below, it was simply fire. The object hammered into the earth with a force that shook the tectonic plate, snapping 100-year-old pines like dry twigs and carving a furrow of molten soil 300 yards long. Steam hissed as the superheated metal cooled in the damp night air of the Pacific Northwest wilderness. It was a pod, smooth and obsidian black, shaped like a tear severed from a god's eye. Silence rushed back into the forest, heavy and terrified. Then, the pod hissed, hydraulic seals groaned, fighting the deformation of the crash, and the hull split open. A soft, rhythmic chime began to pulse from within, a distress beacon trying to pierce the interference of the atmosphere. It failed. The beacon sparked, whined in a dying electronic falsetto, and went dark. Inside the cushioned interior, suspended in a gel that was rapidly evaporating, a child cried. She was not human, though she looked close enough in the dim light. Her skin was pale, but under the surface, along the ridges of her tiny spine and the backs of her hands, faint bioluminescent patterns pulsed in time with her heartbeat. They glowed a soft, nebulous blue like trapped starlight. From the shadows of the tree line, eyes appeared. They were gold and silver, reflecting the dying fires of the crash site. A timber wolf, massive and scarred from seasons of dominance, stepped into the clearing. She was the alpha female, and her pack waited nervously behind her, whines trapped in their throats. The scent of ozone and burning metal was offensive to them, but the sound of the cry was primal. It was a sound that bypassed the logic of the hunt and struck the core of maternal instinct. The wolf approached the pod, her paws silent on the ash-covered ground. She sniffed the air, her nose twitching at the metallic tang, until she reached the infant. The baby stopped crying, her wide, violet eyes locking onto the beast. The infant reached out, a tiny hand glowing faintly, and grasped the wolf's thick fur. The alpha did not snap. She did not recoil. In a moment that defied the brutal laws of nature, she lowered her massive head and licked the strange, glowing gel from the child's face. The wolf exhaled, a long breath of steam in the cooling air, and lay down, curling her body around the shivering warmth of the star child. The pack watched. Then slowly, one by one, they emerged from the dark to join the circle. The beacon gave one last, pathetic flicker and died completely. The signal meant to alert a royal fleet thousands of light years away dissolved into static, lost in the cosmic background radiation. The child was alone on a hostile rock, protected only by teeth and fur. Time did not move linearly in the forest. It moved in cycles of hunger and plenty, freeze and thaw. Seasons bled into one another in a montage of sensory violence and beauty. The infant grew, shedding the softness of childhood for the lean, hard muscle of a predator. Winter, 5 years later. The child, now a scrawny girl with matted hair, ran on all fours through deep snow, keeping pace with the yearlings. She did not feel the cold the way a human would. Her internal temperature ran hot, fueled by a metabolism designed for a high-gravity world. Spring, 8 years later. She sat high in the branches of a Douglas fir, 80 feet off the ground, watching a grizzly bear strip bark from a tree below. Her balance was unnatural. She squatted on a branch no thicker than a wrist, completely immobile, her eyes tracking the movement with the precision of a targeting computer. Summer, 12 years later. She was a young woman now, or the alien equivalent. She sprinted through the undergrowth, leaping over a ravine that would have shattered a human athlete's legs. She landed silently, barefoot, her toes gripping the mossy stone. She threw her head back and howled, a sound that started in her chest as a hum and erupted into a melodic, haunting cry that harmonized perfectly with the pack answering her from the ridge. She was elegant, powerful, and utterly feral. Her skin was etched with dirt and scratches, but beneath the grime, the bioluminescent markings still flared when her adrenaline spiked. She knew nothing of stars, or empires, or the throne she was heir to. She knew only the pack, the hunt, and the moon. But the sky was changing again. High above the atmosphere, invisible magnetic storms were chewing through the Earth's protective grid. Satellites were drifting off course, deep space probes were going silent, and in a remote sector of the forest, a rusted chain-link fence was being cut by a pair of bolt cutters held by a very reluctant human hand. Alex adjusted his glasses, which were actually high-end augmented reality lenses housed in thick, retro-style frames, and groaned. He pushed the heavy gate open, the hinges screaming in protest. "This is just great," he thought, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Send the junior engineer. Send the guy who actually likes sanitation. Send Alex into the woods like a video game side quest nobody wants to complete." Alex dragged his equipment case over the threshold. He was tall but slouched, as if trying to minimize his presence in the world. His jacket was a size too big, covered in patches from obscure spaceflight simulators and retro coding conventions. His backpack clanked with the sound of too many portable hard drives and energy bars. He looked up at the research station. It was a concrete blockhouse from the Cold War era, repurposed with a scattering of modern sensor arrays on the roof that looked like frantic metal spiders. "Welcome to Sector 7, Alex muttered to the trees. "Population. Me. And probably a bear that is going to eat me while I am trying to calibrate a graviton sensor." He unlocked the heavy steel door of the station and fumbled for the light switch. Banks of fluorescent tubes flickered to life, humming with an angry buzz. The air inside smelled of stale coffee and ozone. It was perfect. Alex dropped his bags and immediately felt better. Give him people, and he stuttered. Give him a wall of dormant servers and a task to monitor cosmic radiation anomalies, and he was a maestro. He spent the next 6 hours booting up the station. His fingers flew across 3 different keyboards, bypassing corroded circuits and rerouting power from the backup generators. The main wall of screens illuminated the room with a cool blue glow. Cosmic radiation data scrolled down the center monitor in a waterfall of green text. Magnetic readings from the perimeter sensors danced in chaotic waves. "Okay. Let us see what you are seeing," Alex said to the computer. The recent storms had been wreaking havoc on global communications. But the data here was different. It was localized. There was a rhythmic interference pattern in the magnetic field, centered right here in the valley. It looked less like random solar noise and more like a heartbeat. Alex tapped a command to deploy the perimeter drones. Outside, 4 quadcopters lifted off from their charging pads on the roof, their rotors whirring into the night. He sat back in his swivel chair, opening a bag of spicy chips, and watched the camera feeds. The monitors showed the forest in the ghostly grayscale of thermal imaging. Deer moving through the brush, a raccoon raiding a bird nest, the heat signature of the pack of wolves moving along the river. "Wait," Alex said, leaning forward. A crumb of a chip fell onto his shirt. He typed a command to isolate camera 3. The wolves were running, hunting for something. They moved as a fluid unit, a kinetic river of heat. But running alongside them, keeping pace effortlessly, was another heat signature. It was upright, 2 legs. Alex squinted. That is not possible. The figure was sprinting at 30 miles per hour, weaving through the dense trees with a fluidity that defied physics. It leaped over a fallen log, clearing 6 feet of vertical height without breaking stride. Glitch, Alex whispered. It has to be a rendering artifact. He hammered a key to enhance the resolution. The drone stabilized, zooming in. For a split second, the camera caught a clear outline. It was a humanoid shape, long hair trailing behind it like a banner. Bare feet. The figure suddenly stopped. It whipped its head around, looking directly up at the drone. On the screen, 2 points of light flared where the eyes should be, not reflecting light, but generating it. The feed distorted, static tearing through the image like digital claws. A high-pitched squeal erupted from the speakers, and the screen went black. Connection lost. The monitor read in cheerful red letters. Alex sat in silence, his heart doing a double-time rhythm against his ribs. He replayed the footage in slow motion, frame by frame. Run, run, leap, stop, look, there. He froze the frame. It was blurry, but the shape was undeniable. It was a girl, a woman, running with wolves. Alex took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Okay. Alex, you have been awake for 20 hours. You are on your 4th energy drink and you are seeing things. It is a prank. Some locals in a ghillie suit mess with the city scientist. He put his glasses back on. But people in ghillie suits do not run 30 miles per hour. And they do not make military-grade drones drop out of the sky just by looking at them. Outside, the wind picked up, howling around the corners of the concrete bunker. But beneath the wind, there was another sound, a chorus of howls, rising from the tree line, closer than the sensors indicated they should be. Alex looked at the door. He looked at the tranquilizer gun mounted in the emergency glass case on the wall. Standard protocol for bear encounters. He stood up, his knees popping. I am going to regret this, he said to the empty room. I am 100% going to regret this. He grabbed the tranquilizer rifle, checking the dart load. He grabbed a heavy-duty flashlight. He grabbed his portable voice recorder, clicking it out of nervous habit. Log entry. Arrival night. Alex whispered into the device, his voice trembling slightly. Strange anomaly on the drone feed. Wolves are sounding aggressive, going out to check the perimeter. If I am not back in 10 minutes, tell my mother I am sorry I never finished law school. And tell the internet I died doing something cool, not just unlocking the Feral Wolf DLC in real life. He pushed the door open and stepped out into the night. The air was cold and smelled of pine needles and damp earth. The forest was a wall of blackness beyond the pool of light cast by the station's external floods. Alex swept his flashlight beam across the clearing. Shadows jumped and stretched, looking like monsters in the erratic light. Hello? Alex called out. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. I am armed. I mean, with sleep darts. I am not a hunter. Silence answered him. Then, a twig snapped. It came from the left. Alex spun, the beam of light cutting through the mist. Nothing but tree trunks. Another snap, behind him. He spun again, boots crunching on the gravel. Nothing. From the high branch of an oak tree at the edge of the clearing, she watched him. She was crouched low, her muscles coiled. The moonlight caught the sharp angles of her face, the wild tangle of her hair, and the faint rhythmic pulsing of the bioluminescent markings that ran down her neck and disappeared into the tattered remnants of animal skins she wore. She sniffed the air. The creature below smelled strange. He did not smell like the two legs who sometimes came with loud sticks and traps. He smelled of copper, static, and artificial chemicals. He smelled like the hard-shelled beetles that buzzed in the sky. But mostly, he smelled of fear. Sharp, acrid fear. She tilted her head. The alpha had taught her that fear made prey run. But this prey was standing its ground, holding a stick that smelled of poison. He was an intruder in her territory. He controlled the buzzing eyes. She dropped from the tree. Alex heard the sound of air being displaced, a heavy whoosh above him. He started to look up, but he was too slow. Something heavy and hard slammed into his chest. The breath left his lungs in a painful wheeze. The tranquilizer rifle went spinning away into the dark. Alex hit the ground hard, the gravel digging into his back, and before he could scramble away, he was pinned. He gasped, eyes wide, staring up into the beam of his fallen flashlight which lay a few feet away. Straddling him, pinning his arms with terrifying strength, was the figure from the video. Up close, she was breathtaking and terrifying. Her face was smeared with mud, her hair a dark halo filled with leaves and twigs. But her eyes were violet nebulas, glowing with an inner light that made Alex's brain short-circuit. Her lips were pulled back in a snarl, revealing teeth that looked sharper than any human's should be. Her hands, gripping his shoulders, ended in fingernails that were thick, dark, and pointed like claws. Alex froze, total paralysis. His fight-or-flight response had apparently chosen shut down and reboot. She leaned down, her face inches from his. She sniffed him, a sharp, animalistic inhalation. Her glowing eyes narrowed. She seemed confused. Alex realized he was shaking. His heart was hammering against his ribs so hard he thought she must be able to feel it. The wolves emerged from the shadows, circling them, low growls rumbling in their chests. They waited for her signal. One word, one gesture, and Alex knew he would be past tense. But she didn't strike. She shifted her weight, her knee pressing into his stomach, and brought her face to his neck, sniffing again. She recoiled slightly, wrinkling her nose. She made a sound, not a growl, but a clicking, guttural vocalization, like a question in a language made of stones breaking. Alex swallowed. His throat felt like sandpaper. "Easy," he whispered. The word came out as a squeak. He tried again. "Easy. I am not gonna hurt you." She froze at the sound of his voice. She looked at his mouth, watching the way the words formed, her head cocked to the side, mimicking the movement of a canine. But the intelligence in those glowing eyes was distinctly, piercingly sentient. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine cut through the air. One of the other drones, programmed to return to base, descended from the tree line, its navigation lights blinking red and green. It hovered 10 feet away, its sensors locking onto the movement. The girl snarled, a vicious, vibrating sound. She looked at the drone, her eyes flaring with sudden intensity. "Get back," Alex yelled, instinctively trying to shield her, though he was the one pinned. The drone didn't just land. As the girl's anxiety spiked, the markings on her skin flashed bright white. An invisible wave of distortion rippled out from her body. The drone's battery pack detonated. Crack boom. Sparks showered down like fireworks. The explosion was small but loud in the quiet forest. The girl yelped, rolling off Alex with the speed of a striking cobra. She was on her feet in a crouch instantly, baring her teeth at the smoking wreckage of the machine. She looked at Alex, betrayal flashing across her face. She thought he had summoned the lightning. "No! Wait!" Alex scrambled to sit up, holding his hands out. It was an accident. She did not wait. She turned and vanished into the tree line, a blur of shadow and light. The wolves followed her, melting into the darkness as if they had never been there. Alex was left sitting in the dirt, surrounded by silence and the smell of burnt lithium. He sat there for a full minute, just breathing. In, out, in, out. He checked his chest. No blood, just bruises forming where her fingers had gripped him. He crawled over to his flashlight and picked it up. Then he found the tranquilizer gun. He stood up, his legs wobbling like jelly, and walked back into the station. He locked the door. Then he engaged the deadbolt. Then he pushed a heavy equipment crate in front of the door, just in case. Alex sat down at his console, his hands shaking so badly he could barely type. He pulled the memory card from his chest pocket, the small body camera he wore on his strap, a habit from field inspections. He loaded the footage. There it was, the chaotic tumble, the sky spinning, and then her. He paused the frame. The image was grainy but clear enough. The girl was hovering over him, her hair wild, her skin glowing with those geometric, impossible markings. She looked like a spirit of the forest or a demon or something that had fallen out of a mythology book and landed in a sci-fi movie. She was undeniably not human. The bone structure was too angular, the eyes too large, the biometrics he had felt when she pinned him. Her skin had been burning hot, fever hot. Alex leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his messy hair. An alien princess raised by wolves meets a human nerd, he whispered to the empty room. Yeah, that is my life now, apparently. He looked at the phone on his desk. The direct line to the director of operations. The protocol was clear. Report any biological anomalies immediately. Class 1 priority. They would send a containment team within the hour. Men in hazmat suits, cages, vivisection tables. Alex looked at the frozen image of the girl. He remembered the way she had hesitated, the way she had sniffed him, curious instead of murderous, the fear in her eyes when the drone exploded. She was just a kid, a terrifying, super-powered kid, but a kid. If he called it in, she was dead, or worse, she would become a specimen. Alex slowly reached out and unplugged the phone line. He opened his encrypted personal log, the one he used for venting about his coworkers and designing video game levels. He created a new entry. Date, October 14th. Time, 3 in the morning. Subject, anomaly. He typed slowly, choosing his words with the precision of a man dismantling a bomb. Readings confirmed extreme magnetic interference in Sector 7. Source appears to be geological. No biological assets detected. Sensors are malfunctioning due to atmospheric conditions. Will require several weeks to recalibrate and investigate manually. Do not send support. I repeat, do not send support. He stared at the lie on the screen. It was a career-ending lie, maybe a life-ending one. He hit save. Alex looked back at the frozen face of the glowing girl on his screen. Until I know more, he whispered, typing the words into a hidden sub-file. I am going to protect her. The forest did not forgive, and it did not forget. For 7 days following the explosion of the drone, the tree line remained a wall of silence. Alex sat inside the concrete box of Sector 7, watching the thermal feeds until his eyes burned and his caffeine headache became a permanent resident behind his temples. He had established a perimeter, not for defense, but for diplomacy. Every morning at 6 o'clock, Alex put on his heavy jacket and walked exactly 50 paces from the station door. He carried a plastic cooler. On a flat, moss-covered rock that looked like a sacrificial altar, he placed his offerings: 3 pounds of raw beef, thawed from the station's emergency freezer, a handful of apples, a bag of unsalted peanuts. He would back away slowly, hands visible, broadcasting harmlessness. I am just the caterer, he would mutter to himself. Just the Uber Eats guy for the apex predators. Do not mind me. From the shadows. She watched him. She was perched in the crook of an ancient cedar, her body draped with the stillness of a hunting cat. Her wolves were scattered below her, bellies low to the damp earth, noses twitching at the scent of blood and meat. They wanted to rush the food, but a low, sharp click from her throat held them back. She studied the two-legged creature. He was clumsy. He stepped on dry twigs. He shivered in the morning mist. He had no shell, no fur, no claws. Yet he controlled the lightning. The paradox fascinated her. He left the food and retreated to his stone cave. There were no snares. There were no pits dug beneath the leaves. Curiosity, a trait as dangerous as hunger, began to itch beneath her skin. Inside the station, Alex was losing his mind. He paced the length of the main control room, holding his voice recorder like a microphone. He needed a plan. If she came back, when she came back, he needed to communicate. He could not just scream and drop a drone on her again. He cleared his throat, pressing the record button. "Greetings," he said, pitching his voice deep. "I am Alex. I come in peace. Take me to your—" "No, no, that is terrible." He clicked stop, rewound, and erased it. He paced again, rubbing the back of his neck. He hit record again. "Hello? You are safe here. I am a scientist. I study rocks and space. I am not with the bad guys. Do you understand the concept of bad guys?" He groaned and slumped into his swivel chair, burying his face in his hands. "I am talking to a girl who runs with wolves and glows in the dark," he said to the empty room. "She probably thinks I am a wizard or a snack, or a wizard snack." He played back the recording of his own voice. It sounded thin, anxious. He deleted it. "Try again." "Alex," he told himself. "Keep it simple." He hit a record. "I am Alex. This is food. You are hungry. Let us be friends." He stared at the recorder. "Pathetic," he whispered. But it might just work. Outside, the pattern held. For 3 days, the food vanished. Alex never saw them take it. He would turn his back to check a sensor, and when he looked again, the rock was bare. On the 4th day, he added something new. Beside the meat and apples, he placed a thermal blanket, the silver, crinkly kind, and a heavy-duty plastic canteen filled with filtered water. He went back inside and waited. This time, he did not look at the screens. He sat by the window, watching through the thick reinforced glass. Movement. A gray wolf, the size of a pony, stepped out of the ferns. It sniffed the rock, grabbed a hunk of meat, and vanished. Then another. Finally, she appeared. She moved differently than the wolves. She did not slink. She flowed. She approached the rock, ignoring the food. She picked up the blanket. The silver material caught the sunlight, flashing. She sniffed it. She rubbed the material between her fingers, listening to the crinkle. She uncorked the canteen, sniffed the water, and poured a little onto her hand. She looked at the station. She looked right at the window where Alex was hiding. She did not smile, but her posture softened. She slung the blanket over her shoulders like a cape, grabbed the canteen, and disappeared into the woods. Alex let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for a week. "Progress," he said. The breakthrough came with the rain. 2 nights later, a storm system from the Pacific hammered the coast. It was a deluge, a curtain of water so heavy it felt like the ocean had inverted itself. Thunder shook the foundations of the bunker. The wind screamed like a wounded animal. Alex was working late, recalibrating the magnetic sensors which were, as usual, screaming about anomalies. He had a mug of cocoa and a blanket draped over his shoulders. A motion alert chimed on the console. Not a drone feed, the proximity sensor at the main airlock. Alex froze. He brought up the camera feed. She was there. She stood directly in front of the massive steel doors, shivering. The thermal blanket he had given her was soaked through and useless. Her hair was plastered to her face. Her bioluminescent markings were dim, flickering weakly against the cold. Behind her, 3 wolves huddled against the concrete wall, looking miserable and wet. She was not attacking. She was seeking shelter. Alex did not hesitate. He did not grab the tranquilizer gun. He grabbed a stack of dry towels and hit the door release. The hydraulic seals hissed, a sound that cut through the roar of the rain. The heavy door slid aside. The girl flinched, dropping into a defensive crouch, her lips peeling back from her teeth. The wolves bristled, low growls rumbling in their chests. Alex stood in the doorway, hands open, palms up. The warmth from the station spilled out into the cold night, carrying the scent of cocoa and heated air. "Come in," Alex said. He shouted to be heard over the rain, but he kept his tone gentle. "It is warm." She looked at him. She looked at the warm yellow light spilling onto the wet concrete. She looked at her shivering pack. Slowly. She straightened. She took a step forward, then another. She crossed the threshold. The moment she was inside, the wolves surged past her, shaking their coats violently, sending a spray of dirty water all over Alex in the pristine hallway. "Hey!" Alex yelled, flinching. The girl watched him, her eyes wide. She waited for him to strike. When he just wiped the water from his glasses and sighed, looking resigned rather than angry. She relaxed. The door slid shut behind them, sealing out the storm. The silence in the station was sudden and heavy. They stood in the hallway, a human engineer, a feral alien princess, and 3 apex predators who smelled like wet dogs. Alex moved slowly. He picked up a bottle of water from a crate near the door. He cracked the seal, snap, and held it out to her. She watched his hand. She recognized the object from the rock. She reached out, her movement snatching and quick, and took it. She sniffed the opening. Then she looked at Alex, waiting. "Drink," Alex said. He mimed lifting a glass to his lips. "Water." She brought the bottle to her mouth and took a tentative sip. Her eyes widened. It was clean, pure, without the taste of mud or river silt. She drank greedily, draining half the bottle in seconds. She lowered the bottle, gasping for air. She looked at Alex, her violet eyes locking onto his behind the lenses of his glasses. She tapped the bottle with a clawed fingernail. "Water," she rasped. Her voice was rough, unused to forming syllables, like a rusted hinge being forced open. But it was clear. Alex felt a shiver go down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "Water," Alex repeated, smiling. "Yes, water." The next 2 weeks were a montage of impossible domesticity. The research station, once a sterile environment of data and dust, became a den. The wolves claimed the floor of the main control room. They treated the server racks like trees, sniffing them suspiciously, and curled up on the warm ventilation grates to sleep. Alex had to step over a sleeping 100-pound timber wolf just to get to the coffee machine. Communication was a chaotic game of charades. Alex used a tablet. He would pull up an image, a deer, a tree, a star, and say the word. She would stare at the screen, fascinated by the trapped light, and mimic him. She learned fast, terrifyingly fast. It was not just mimicry, it was absorption. She did not just learn the word for apple. She understood the concept of food, of storage, of trade. She pointed to herself one afternoon. Who? She asked. Alex blinked. Me? I am Alex. She frowned, pointed to herself again. What? Am I? The question hung in the air, heavy and sad. Alex put down the tablet. He looked at her. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, wearing one of his oversized hoodies that hung to her knees. She looked almost human, until you saw the way her eyes reflected the monitor light, or the way the faint blue patterns on her skin pulsed when she was thinking hard. I do not know, Alex said honestly, but we can find out. He gestured to the medical bay, a small, sterile room adjacent to the lab. He had avoided it until now, afraid of scaring her. I have a machine, Alex said, struggling to simplify the complex. It looks inside like seeing bones. It can tell me what you are. She stiffened. The wolves lifted their heads, sensing her tension. Alex sat on the exam table. Watch. Me first. He activated the handheld scanner. A beam of blue light swept over his arm. The monitor on the wall displayed a skeletal rendering of his hand and wrist, showing bone density and muscle tissue. See? Alex said. Just pictures. No pain. She watched the screen, entranced. She stood up and walked over to him. She held out her arm. Alex took a breath. He gently took her hand. Her skin was hotter than a human's, vibrating with a low-level energy that made his fingers tingle. Okay, Alex whispered, still and quiet. He ran the scanner over her forearm. The monitor flickered. Instead of white bone and red muscle, the screen erupted in a chaotic storm of gold and purple data. The readings spiked so high the numbers turned into error codes. Beneath her skin, threaded through the muscle and wrapped around her bones, was a network. Filaments of light, nodes of liquid metal. It looked like a nervous system made of fiber optics and starlight. She was not just biological, she was a synthesis. The scanner let out a high-pitched whine. Warning, the automated voice droned. Energy spike detected. Suddenly, the lights in the room surged, glowing blindingly bright before blowing out completely. The monitors dissolved into static. A shockwave of electromagnetic force rippled out from the girl's arm, knocking the scanner from Alex's hand. The girl screamed, a sound of pure panic. She ripped her arm away, clutching it to her chest. The wolves roared, scrambling to their feet, teeth bared, surrounding her in a defensive ring. The emergency red lights kicked on, bathing the room in the color of blood. She backed into the corner, hyperventilating, the implants in her skin flaring violently. She looked ready to kill or die. "Hey!" Alex yelled, holding his hands up, staying low. "It is okay. Look at me," she snarled, tears of fear welling in her luminous eyes. Alex dropped to his knees. He made himself small. He put his hand over his own heart, tapping his chest rhythmically. "I am here," he said, his voice steady and low. "You are okay. The machine broke. You are strong. You are stronger than the machine." He kept tapping his chest. Thump, 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 thump. She watched him. She listened to the rhythm. Slowly, the flaring light in her skin began to dim. The wolves stopped snarling, though they kept their eyes on Alex. "I swear," Alex said, looking directly into her violet eyes. "I will protect you. Nobody is going to hurt you. Not here." She took a shuddering breath. She mimicked his gesture, placing her clawed hand over her own heart. "Protect," she whispered. In the days that followed, the pieces began to fit together. She sat with Alex in the evenings, the station humming quietly around them. As her vocabulary expanded, she began to drag memories out of the fog of her infancy. She drew pictures on the whiteboard, a circle falling from the sky. "Bright shell," she said, pointing to the circle. She drew a stick figure with a crown. Sky Mother, she said. She touched her own face, then the drawing. Sky Mother screams, then fire, then wolves. Alex stared at the drawing. A pod, a ship, a mother. She was a castaway. She touched the drawing of the Sky Mother again. She came back? The girl asked. Alex felt a lump in his throat. The odds of a rescue after 20 years were astronomical, but he could not crush that hope. Maybe, Alex said. We can listen to her. He turned to his star charts on the main screen. He pulled up the constellation that sat directly above the forest this time of year. The harp. Lyra, Alex said, pointing to the stars. The girl looked at the screen. Lyra? It is a name, Alex said, for the stars and maybe for you, since you came from them. She rolled the word around in her mouth, tasting the vowels. Lyra. She smiled. It was the first time he had seen her truly smile, and it transformed her face from something feral into something radiant. She reached out and poked Alex in the chest. Lyra, she said. Then she pointed to him. Alex. Yes, Alex said, his face heating up. That is us. The bond between them grew, woven from shared food, broken grammar, and the silence of the forest. But it was the second storm that changed the texture of that silence. It was late. The wind was howling again, a mournful sound that seemed to rattle the bones of the station. Thunder cracked directly overhead, shaking the floor plates. The two younger wolves, yearlings who had never known a storm inside a metal box, were pacing nervously, whining. Alex was lying in his bunk in the small sleeping quarters, reading a book by the light of a tablet. The room was tiny, barely big enough for the bed and a locker. The door creaked open. Alex looked up. Lyra stood there. She was wearing a pair of his sweatpants and a loose t-shirt. She looked agitated. The thunder boomed again, and she flinched, wolf-scared, she said simply. She did not wait for an invitation. She climbed into the bunk. Alex froze, pressing himself against the wall. Whoa, wait. Lyra, she ignored him. In her world, in the pack, fear was met with a pile. You slept together to share heat, to protect the vulnerable. Personal space was a concept for creatures that did not have to fight to survive. She whistled low. The two young wolves trotted into the room and curled up on the rug beside the bed. Lyra lay down on the narrow mattress. She did not stay on her side. She shifted, draping her arm across Alex's chest and resting her head on his shoulder, her nose burying into the fabric of his shirt. She exhaled, her body relaxing instantly as she felt the warmth and steadiness of him. Alex, on the other hand, stopped breathing entirely. He was a 26-year-old man who had spent more time with circuit boards than women, and now a devastatingly beautiful alien princess was draped over him like a heavy blanket. He could feel the heat radiating from her skin, that higher than human metabolism. He could smell the forest on her hair, pine, rain, and something musky and sweet. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. Thump, 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 thump. Lyra shifted, pressing her ear closer to his chest. She was listening to the rhythm. Fast, she murmured. Are you scared? Alex swallowed hard. No, not scared, just... He gently took her shoulders and pushed her back, just an inch. Lyra, he said, his voice rough. This is close. She looked up at him, confused in the dim light of the tablet. Close is good. Warm. In the pack. Yes, Alex said. He struggled to find the words that wouldn't shame her but would protect his own sanity and moral compass. But for humans, for me, this kind of closeness is intimate. It means something else, She stared at him, her violet eyes searching his face. She traced the line of his jaw with her eyes. She was feral, but she was not naive. She understood mating. She understood the hierarchy of the pack. But this nervousness of his was new. "You do not want to?" she asked. Alex closed his eyes for a second. God, he wanted it so much it hurt. But not like this. Not because she was scared of thunder. Not because she did not know any better. "I do," Alex admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "But we should. Go slow. You are learning to be a human, or learning to be you. I do not want to confuse things. You need to understand the rules before you decide to break them." Lyra watched him. She listened to the spike in his heart rate, smelled the pheromones of attraction that contradicted his words. She saw the rigid line of his jaw, the way he held his hands away from her, respecting a line she could not see but could feel. He was protecting her. Again, even from himself. She nodded slowly. "Slow," she repeated. She shifted her weight. She rolled off his chest and lay down beside him, pressing her back against the wall, leaving a few inches of space between them. But she did not retreat completely. She reached out and took his hand. She pulled it over to her side of the bed and placed his palm flat against her chest, right over her heart. Her heart beat slower than his, a powerful rhythmic thud that felt like a heavy engine idling. "Feel," she whispered, not scared. "Safe." Alex left his hand there, feeling the rise and fall of her breath, the impossible strength of the life inside her. The tension in the room shifted from panic to something heavy, electric, and agonizingly sweet. "Okay," Alex whispered. "Safe." They lay there in the dark, listening to the rain hammer against the roof, holding hands across the invisible boundary between two worlds. 400 miles away, in a city that never saw real darkness. A man in a gray suit sat in a glass-walled office. He was reviewing a data packet that had been flagged by an automated crawler algorithm. It was a black box report from a deep space monitoring buoy, dated 20 years ago. The file had been dormant, classified as space debris entry. But recent atmospheric disturbances had triggered a reanalysis. The trajectory data had been updated. The man zoomed in on the impact site. Coordinates, Sector 7. The remote forest. He tapped his earpiece. "Get me on the asset recovery team," he said. His voice was smooth, devoid of emotion. "We have a confirmed hit on the celestial object, and..." Checking current station logs, it looks like our local babysitter has gone offline. He looked at Alex's employee file on the second screen. "Send a quiet team," the man ordered. "If the object is intact, I want it. If the witness is a problem, remove him." He closed the file. The hunt had begun. The autumn leaves had begun to turn the color of rusted iron, dropping from the canopy to carpet the forest floor in damp, decaying layers. Inside Sector 7, however, the seasons were measured not by temperature, but by the rapid expansion of a vocabulary. Lyra was a sponge. She absorbed language with the same terrifying efficiency she used to track prey. In 3 weeks, she had moved from single nouns to fractured sentences. In 5 weeks, she was asking questions that made Alex pause his coding and stare at the wall. She sat on the edge of his desk, her legs swinging. She was wearing a pair of his cargo shorts, cinched tight with a belt and a flannel shirt that engulfed her frame. The wolves were asleep under the console, a tangled rug of fur and breathing rib cages. "Alex," she said. She pronounced his name with a hard consonant at the end, distinct and sharp. "Why are you alone?" Alex looked up from his keyboard. He adjusted his glasses. Buying time. What do you mean? No pack, Lyra said. She gestured to the empty station, the silent halls. You have a box. You have a firelight. You have food. But no pack. Wolves do not live alone. Only sick wolves live alone. Are you sick? She leaned forward, sniffing the air near his neck, genuinely checking for the scent of illness. Alex laughed, a dry, self-deprecating sound. No, I am not sick. I mean, I have allergies, but that does not count. Humans are different. Some of us like the quiet. Lyra frowned. Quiet is for hiding. Quiet is for hunting. Alex spun his chair around to face her. Look, people make me nervous. Crowds are loud. They are messy. Everyone wants something from you, or they expect you to be something you are not. Here, it is just data. Data does not judge my haircut or my inability to make small talk. Lyra tilted her head, considering this. She looked down at the sleeping wolves. Wolves loud, she countered. Wolves bite. Wolves smell. You do not like wolves? I like them, Alex admitted, glancing nervously at the alpha female's massive paws twitching in a dream. From a distance, or, you know, when they are not looking at me like I am a pork chop. Lyra made a sound that was half laugh, half bark. It was a raw, delightful noise that always made Alex's chest feel tight. You pack now, she decided, tapping his knee with a clawed finger. Small pack, weak pack. But pack. Alex felt a flush creep up his neck. Thanks. I think. To bridge the cultural gap, Alex initiated Project Humanity. It involved a crash course in Earth culture via the station's high-definition holo projector. He started with nature documentaries, which Lyra critiqued mercilessly. That bear is stupid, and she announced during a scene of a salmon run. Too slow. I would take 2 fish, and then move to action movies. The results were chaotic. They were watching a classic 90s sci-fi film one evening. The villain, a cyborg with a glowing red eye, monologued on the screen. Lyra was sitting on a beanbag chair, eating popcorn with the intensity of a starving creature. Suddenly, the cyborg drew a weapon. Lyra did not just watch. She reacted. She launched herself from the beanbag, snarling, and tackled the holographic projection. She passed right through the light, stumbling, and turned to glare at Alex as if he had tricked her. It is fake, Alex yelled, laughing so hard he had to put his cocoa down. It is just light, Lyra hissed at the dissipating image. He showed teeth. When the enemy shows teeth, you strike. She turned her gaze to Alex. You die first in the forest. Probably, Alex agreed. She did not sit back down. She looked at him, her eyes playful and dangerous. Her adrenaline was up. Show me, she commanded. Show me fight. No, absolutely not, Alex said, raising his hands. I possess 0 fighting skills. My combat experience is entirely limited to button mashing on a controller. Lyra ignored his protest. She lunged. It was not an attack. It was play. But playing for a superpowered alien raised by wolves was a terrifying experience for a human engineer. She hit him low, tackling him off his swivel chair. They landed on the pile of beanbags in a tangle of limbs. Alex gasped. The wind knocked out of him. Lyra pinned him instantly, straddling his waist, her hands pinning his wrists to the floor. She was grinning, her hair falling around them like a curtain. Dead, she whispered, her face inches from his. Alex looked up at her. She was heavy, warm, and smelled of popcorn and ozone. Her eyes were glowing faint violets, and her breath ghosted against his lips. The laughter died in his throat, replaced by a sudden, crushing awareness of her body against his. He could feel the strength in her thighs, the sharpness of her nails against his skin, the heat radiating from her core. I yielded. Alex squeaked. Good game. You win. Lyra stayed there for a second too long. She looked at his mouth. She lowered her head, just an inch, sniffing him again. The playfulness in her eyes darkened into something more instinctual, more curious. Your heart is fast again, she noted softly. Alex swallowed. Yeah, it does that when I get tackled by apex predators. She smirked, a very human expression she must have picked up from the movies, and rolled off him. You need training, she declared, grabbing another handful of popcorn. While their domestic life settled into a strange rhythm, the station's instruments began to scream. It started with minor variances, gravitational anomalies that lasted for microseconds, magnetic spikes that ghosted through the valley. But whenever Lyra got upset, like the time she dropped a glass jar and shattered it, the readings went off the charts. Her implants were waking up. Alex sat at the main console late one night, staring at a correlation graph. He called Lyra over. Lyra, look at this. She stood behind him, resting her chin on his shoulder, a habit she had developed that made it very hard for him to focus on algebra. Lines, she said. These lines are you, Alex said. He pulled up a star chart. He pointed to a cluster of stars in the Lyra constellation, and these lines are coming from here. She went still. Alex turned in his chair. I have a theory. I do not think you were abandoned. I think you were hidden. The tech inside you. It is receiver tech. It is waiting for a signal, and recently, the storms have been carrying pieces of that signal. Lyra looked at the stars on the screen. She touched the glass. Not a wolf, she whispered, not human. What am I? The vulnerability in her voice broke his heart. She was a queen of the forest, fierce and lethal. But in this moment, she was just a lost child looking for a reflection. Alex reached out and took her hand. The implants beneath her skin hummed against his palm. You are Lyra, he said firmly. You are the person who saved me from being bored to death. You are the person who likes spicy chips and hates bad movie villains. You are you. That is enough. She looked at him, searching his face for deception. Finding none, she squeezed his hand. We go, she said suddenly. Where do you go? She pointed to the forest, toward the deep north sector, to the shell. The wolves know. The hike to the crash site took 4 hours. The wolves led the way, moving through the undergrowth like smoke. Alex stumbled along behind them, carrying a backpack full of sensors, breathless and sweating. Lyra moved around him in circles, effortlessly leaping over logs that Alex had to clamber over with the grace of a drunken toddler. They reached the site just as the sun began to dip below the tree line. It was a crater, vast and overgrown. Nature had tried to heal the wound the ship had made 20 years ago. Moss draped over twisted shards of black metal. Saplings grew through the shattered remains of the hull, but the center was still barren, a circle of scorched earth where nothing would grow. Lyra stopped at the edge of the crater. She trembled. This place, she whispered. She walked down the slope, her bare feet silent on the ash. Alex followed, his Geiger counter clicking rhythmically. The radiation was low, background level only. The power source was dead. Or so he thought. Lyra reached the center. A large piece of curved metal, the remains of the cockpit, lay half buried in the mud. Glyphs were etched into the surface, sharp, angular geometry that hurt the eyes to look at directly. She reached out and touched the glyphs. Flash. The memory hit her with the force of a physical blow, the smell of burning ozone, red warning lights pulsing, a woman's face, pale, terrified, with eyes that burned like violet stars. A voice, singing a melody that sounded like glass bells. Sleep, my little storm. Sleep until the sky is clear. The sensation of falling, the darkness. Lyra gasped, her knees buckling. Alex dropped his equipment and caught her before she hit the ground. Lyra, you okay? She clutched his jacket, her eyes wide and unseeing for a moment. Mother, she gasped. She sang. She was scared. She put me here to hide. As she spoke, the emotion triggered her biofeedback. Her markings flared brilliant blue, and in response, the dead metal beneath them groaned. A dormant beacon, buried deep in the wreckage, fed off her proximity. A low hum vibrated through the soles of Alex's boots. The glyphs on the hull lit up, answering Lyra's glow. Alex looked at his handheld scanner. The screen was flashing red. Oh no, he muttered. That is a signal. That is a very strong signal. The beacon fired. It was not a visible laser, but a pulse of subspace energy that punched straight up through the atmosphere. To the naked eye, it was just a shimmer in the air. To the listening posts in orbit, it was a flare gun in a dark room. It is calling them, Lyra said, staring at the metal. Alex looked at the sky. It is calling everyone. The energy in the crater was palpable, a static charge that made the hair on Alex's arms stand up. Lyra turned to him. She was vibrating with the aftershocks of the memory and the surge of the beacon. She looked wild, ancient, and devastatingly human in her grief. She grabbed Alex's lapels and pulled him close. She did not know how to ask for comfort in words. So she used the language of the pack. She pressed her forehead hard against his. Alex froze. Her skin was hot against his. He could feel her breath, ragged and quick. They were standing in the ruin of her past, surrounded by the hum of alien technology, and the world narrowed down to the two of them. Lyra. Alex breathed. She tilted her head back. Her eyes searched for him. The barrier of species and language felt paper thin. She leaned in, her lips parting slightly. The instinct was there to bridge the gap, to fuse her loneliness with his. Alex looked at her lips. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted it more than he had ever wanted anything in his orderly, lonely life. His hands hovered at her waist, trembling. Then he stepped back. He pulled away, his breath hitching. He put a hand on her shoulder, keeping a respectful distance. I cannot, he said, his voice cracking. Lyra looked hurt, confusion clouding her glowing eyes. Why? You want to? I smell it. I do want, Alex confessed, the truth tumbling out. I want to kiss you so bad I can barely think. But you are emotional right now. You are remembering your mother. You are scared and overwhelmed. He looked her in the eyes, steady and serious. If we do this, Lyra, if we cross that line, I want you to choose it when you are calm, when you understand what it means. Not because I am the only person here. Not because you need to feel safe. I want you to choose me. Lyra stared at him. The wind rustled the dead leaves in the crater. The hum of the beacon faded into a low thrum. She looked at this strange man who refused to take what was offered, who placed her agency above his own desire. It was a concept alien to the wild, where the strong simply took. But it was beautiful. Her eyes filled with tears, frustrated, angry, grateful tears. Stupid human, she whispered. She stepped forward again, ignoring his retreat. She did not kiss his mouth. Instead, she leaned up and pressed her lips softly to his cheek, lingering there for a heartbeat. I choose, she murmured against his skin. I chose a pack. I chose Alec, but I learn words first. Alex closed his eyes, savoring the contact. Deal. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away in a boardroom that smelled of expensive leather and ruthless decisions, a man named Director Vance stared at a monitor. The signal from Sector 7 had spiked. It was a beacon signature matching the 20-year-old black box data. He looked at the woman beside him, Agent Thorne, a government handler with eyes as cold as a reptile's. The asset is active, Vance said, and the babysitter. Alex has been feeding us looped data for weeks. Thorne checked her weapon. He is compromising the extraction. We need to verify the biological material before we bring in the heavy transport. Vance decided if it is just wreckage, we secure it. If the girl is alive, we take her. Send the inspection team, he ordered. Tell them it is a routine audit. If Alex hesitates, if he stammers, if he hides anything, burn the site. The next morning, the sound of a helicopter shattered the peace of the forest. Alex was in the kitchen, trying to teach Lyra how to make toast, when the thumping of rotors shook the coffee in his mug. He ran to the window. A sleek black helicopter was descending toward the station's landing pad. It bore the logo of his parent corporation, but it was unmarked by any civilian registration numbers. "Lyra!" Alex hissed, spinning around. "Hide! Now!" Lyra sensed his panic. Her ears flattened. "Who? Bad guys," Alex said. "The people who own this box, and they cannot see you, or they cannot see the wolves." He looked around frantically. The station was small. The bedroom, too obvious. The lab, glass walls. The sub-basement, Alex said. It was not really a basement. It was a maintenance crawl space beneath the server room, accessed by a heavy floor grate. He grabbed Lyra's hand and sprinted to the server room. He hauled the heavy metal grate up. "It is dark," he warned, "and small." Lyra looked into the black hole. She hated enclosed spaces, but she heard the helicopter touching down, the whine of the engine dying. She whistled. The three wolves scrambled over, sliding on the linoleum. They jumped into the hole without hesitation. Lyra looked at Alex. "You?" "I have to stay," Alex said. "I have to lie to them. Go. Please." She dropped into the darkness. Alex slammed the grate down and dragged a heavy rug over it. He kicked a pile of cables over the rug to make it look messy. He sprinted to the main door just as the heavy knock echoed through the station. Alex took a deep breath. He messed up his hair. He put on his thickest, most confusing glasses. He unbuttoned his flannel shirt to look disheveled. "Showtime," he whispered. He opened the door. 3 people stood there. 2 men in tactical gear holding rifles at low ready, and a woman in a sharp gray suit who looked like she ate glass for breakfast. Agent Thorne pushed past him without waiting for an invitation. "Mr. Mercer," she said. Her voice was dry and sharp. "You are hard to reach," Alex stammered, leaning into the role. Yes, the transmitter dish is misaligned. Solar flares. You know how it is. I was just recalibrating the toaster. I mean the tower." Thorne stared at him. She looked around the main room. She saw the beanbag chairs. She saw the multiple empty bags of spicy chips. "We are here for a routine audit," she said. "We have noticed some irregularities in your data streams." "Irregularities?" Alex laughed nervously. "That is my middle name. I mean, not literally. It is James. But, sure. Look around. It is just me and the dust bunnies." Thorne signaled the guards. "Check the perimeter." She walked deeper into the station. She ran a gloved finger over the console. She stopped at the kitchen counter. She picked up long gray hair. "Wolf?" she asked, holding it up. Alex froze. "Ah, yes, local wildlife. Very aggressive. I I had to fight one off with a broom yesterday, and it was terrifying, and I nearly cried. Thorne looked at him with open contempt. She dropped her hair. She walked toward the server room, beneath the floor. Lyra was crouched in the dark, her knees pulled to her chest. The wolves were panting softly, the heat of their bodies making the small space stifling. She could hear the heavy boots clanking on the metal floor above her head. She heard the woman's voice. It sounded like a snake hissing. Alex's voice was high, shaky. He was lying. She could smell the pheromones of his deception drifting down through the vents. He was terrified, but he was standing between her and the snake. Thorne stood on the rug covering the grate. "This room is warm," she noted. "Servers run hot," Alex said quickly. "I am mining crypto on the side. Do not tell the corporation." Thorne ignored the joke. She pulled a small drone from her belt, a surveillance model, the size of a hummingbird. "I am going to leave this here," she said, "to monitor the solar flares. It will interface with your system, and do not touch it." She tossed the drone into the air. It hovered, its camera eyes spinning, scanning the room. It flew low, hovering inches above the rug, below the floor. Lyra watched the red laser grid scan through the gaps in the grate. It was looking for heat signatures. It would see them. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in her chest. Instinct took over. No, she did not think. She reacted. Her implants flared in the dark. Zap! She projected a concentrated pulse of electromagnetic energy straight up. The drone seized in midair. It sparked, spun wildly, and dropped onto the rug like a dead stone. Thorne spun around. "What did you do?" "Nothing," Alex yelped, throwing his hands up. "It must be the magnetic anomaly. I told you, the shielding in here is garbage. It fries electronics all the time. I went through 3 microwaves last week." Thorne glared at the dead drone. She looked at Alex, suspicious. The story was plausible, given the sector readings, but her gut told her something was wrong. She tapped her earpiece. "We are moving out. The equipment here is compromised. We will monitor from the ridge." She stepped closer to Alex, invading his personal space. "If you are hiding something, Mr. Mercer," she whispered, "we will find it, and you will not like what happens next." She turned and marched out. The guards followed. Alex waited until he heard the helicopter lift off. He waited another 5 minutes, watching it disappear over the tree line. He ran to the server room and threw back the rug. He yanked the grate open. "You can come out," he whispered, offering a hand. Lyra emerged, pulling herself up. She was not relieved. She was shaking with rage. She paced the room, her glowing markings pulsing with an angry red-shifted light. The wolves scattered, sensing her fury. "Cages?" She spat the word out. She pointed to the grate. "You put me in a hole, like animals?" "I had to," Alex pleaded. "They would have killed you or take you to a worse hole." "Why?" she demanded. "Why do they want me?" "Because they are afraid," Alex shouted back. "Because you are powerful and they want to control that power. That is what humans do. We categorize things, and if we cannot categorize them, we cage them." Lyra stopped pacing. She backed Alex up until he hit the main console. She leaned in, her eyes blazing violet fire. "Wolves fight," she snarled. "Wolves die fighting, but they do not cage their own." She slammed her hand against the metal console, denting it. "You promised to protect," she said, her voice breaking. "You promised, even from your own pack." The silence in the room was deafening. Alex looked at the dent in the steel. He looked at the girl who could kill him in a heartbeat, but who was looking at him with the terrifying vulnerability of a betrayed child. He swallowed hard. He reached out, very slowly, and took her hand. It was hot, burning with her anger. "Especially from my own pack," Alex said. He squeezed her hand. I am not with them. Lyra, I am with you. If they come back, we fight. I do not know how to fight, but I will learn. I will bite them if I have to. Lyra searched his face. She sniffed the air, smelling the truth in his sweat. She exhaled, the red light in her skin fading back to blue. Okay, she whispered. We fight. She leaned her head against his chest, exhausted, but next time. No hole. No hole, Alex promised. He held her there, in the quiet station, while the invisible net of the conspiracy tightened around them. They were alone against the world, a nerd and an alien princess, and the war was just beginning. The nights in Sector 7 were never truly silent, but lately, the silence had acquired a texture. It was a static charged heaviness that made the hair on Alex's arm stand up even when the equipment was powered down. The air tasted of copper and ozone, a phantom flavor that bled through the ventilation filters. For 3 nights, the station's long-range receivers had been picking up ghosts. Alex sat at the main console, bathed in the sickly green glow of the frequency monitors. He had not slept in 24 hours. His eyes were red-rimmed behind his glasses, and a mountain of empty energy drink cans had formed a jagged skyline on his desk. Through his headphones, a chaotic wash of white noise hissed. It sounded like ocean waves crashing against a microphone, but buried deep within the static. There were patterns, rhythmic mathematical pulses, and then there was the voice. It did not come from the speakers. It came from the corner of the room where Lyra had made her nest of blankets and pillows. She was asleep, curled into a tight ball, the wolves arranged around her like a living fur-lined wall. Her breathing was shallow and rapid. In her sleep, the bioluminescent markings along her spine and neck were flaring with a restless, strobing intensity, blue, then violet, then a harsh, warning amber. She tossed her head, her hand clawing at the blanket. Kalatora. Shia Nim. She whispered. Alex spun his chair around, sliding his headphones off one ear. He hit the record button on the console's omnidirectional mic. Lyra, he whispered. She did not wake. Her eyes were moving rapidly beneath her eyelids. She was dreaming, but she was also receiving. Her implants, those dormant filaments of star tech woven into her nervous system, were acting as a living antenna. Imperia. Dach. Solus. Her voice was different. It was not the halting, broken English she used with him. It was fluid, tonal, and layered with a grief that transcended language. Alex typed the phonetic sounds into his translation algorithm. He had been building the database for weeks. Cross-referencing the few words she remembered with the mathematical patterns in the signal. The screen churned. Processing. Translation. The throne. Bleeds. The shadow. Hunts. Alex felt a chill slide down his spine. He looked back at the girl. She let out a low whimper, and the alpha female lifted her head, licking Lyra's cheek in a futile attempt to soothe a nightmare that was light years away. Mother. Skyburn. Run. Lyra gasped. She arched her back, a sudden spasm of energy arching between her shoulder blades. The station's lights flickered and dimmed. Alex grabbed his tablet and began furiously logging the bursts. The signal from space was getting stronger. It was not just random noise anymore. It was a broadcast, a war cry. By morning, the storm in the ether had calmed, but the data Alex had harvested painted a picture of catastrophic violence. He sat at the small kitchen table, staring at his tablet. Lyra was outside with the wolves, running off the residual energy of the night. He could see her through the reinforced glass, leaping between the trees, moving with a desperate, kinetic joy. Alex looked down at the decoded text. Civil War. The usurper faction claims the core systems. The Empress remains besieged in the outer rim. The search for the Star Child continues. Bounty issued, dead or alive. Alex rubbed his face. It was not just a crash. It was a coup. Lyra was not just a refugee. She was the heir to an interstellar empire that was currently burning to the ground. And the storms that had been plaguing Earth's satellites were the ripples of massive antimatter detonations occurring parsecs away. But that was not the worst part. Alex swiped to the next file. This one was not from space. It was from a hacked server in a secure data farm in Northern Virginia. He had spent the last 6 hours digging into his own employer's encrypted archives, looking for the inspection team's true mandate. He found it, a contract. A partnership agreement between the shadowy corporate board of his company and an entity simply listed as the Vanguards. The terms were chilling. Earth would provide sanctuary for asset recovery operations in exchange for salvaged technology rights. They were selling her. The corporation had aligned itself with the rebels. They were going to trade Lyra's life for advanced engines and weapons. Alex felt sick. He needed guidance. He needed to know if there was anyone left he could trust. He picked up his secure satellite phone. There was one number he had memorized, Professor Holloway, his old mentor from MIT, the man who had recruited him, the man who had taught him that science was about truth, not profit. Holloway was high up in the administration now, an advisor to the board. If anyone could stop this, it was him. Alex dialed. The line clicked and hissed, then connected. "Professor?" Alex said, his voice tight. "It is Alex. Mercer." "Alex?" Holloway's voice was warm, fatherly. "My boy, you are supposed to be on radio silence. Is everything all right out there in the woods?" "No," Alex said. "Professor, listen to me. The anomaly, it is not geological. It is biological, and it is sentient." There was a pause on the line, a pause that lasted 2 seconds too long. "I see," Holloway said slowly. "And have you secured it?" Alex hesitated. The tone was wrong. It was too calm, too clinical. I am monitoring it," Alex lied. "But Professor, I found files. The board. They are talking to someone hostile. They are planning to hand this thing over to a faction that wants to destroy it. We have to stop them." Another pause. Then, the sound of a keyboard clacking in the background. "Alex, listen to me very carefully," Holloway said. "You are a brilliant engineer, but you do not understand the geopolitics at play here. This is bigger than one biological entity. This is about the future of humanity, the technology we stand to gain. It could solve the energy crisis. It could end famine." Alex's grip on the phone tightened until the plastic creaked. "You know," Alex whispered. "You are part of it." "We are doing what is necessary," Holloway said, his voice hardening. "Now, I need you to stay put. Keep the asset contained. Do not let it run. We have a containment team en route. You have done well. Alex, you have been a very useful asset." "Useful assets." The words hit Alex like a physical slap. He was not a scientist to them. He was just another piece of equipment, a sensor with a pulse. Alex did not say goodbye. He did not argue. He smashed the phone against the edge of the metal table. It shattered into plastic shards and silicon dust. He stood there, breathing hard, staring at the debris. The door to the station slid open. Lyra stood there. She was flushed from running, her hair wild, leaves caught in the tangles. But her smile died instantly when she saw his face. She smelled the anger on him. It was sharp, bitter, like burning rubber. "Alex?" she asked. "Who hurt?" She stepped into the room, the wolves trailing her. Her eyes darted to the broken phone, then back to him. Her hands curled into claws. "Who hurt the pack?" she demanded. Alex looked at her. He looked at the girl who had been raised by wolves, who had learned to be human by watching bad movies and eating spicy chips with him. He looked at the princess of a burning empire. "Everyone," Alex said, his voice hollow. He walked over to the main screen and threw the data up on the wall, the star charts, the decoded messages of war, the corporate contract. "Sit down, Lyra," Alex said gently. "I have to tell you a story, and it is not a happy one." He explained everything. He used simple words, but he did not soften the blow. He told her about the coup. He told her about her mother, the Empress, fighting a losing war in the dark. He told her that the bad guys were not just coming. They were already here. And his own people, his own mentors, had sold her out for spare parts. Lyra sat on the floor, her knees pulled to her chest. She stared at the screen, at the swirling red lines of the conflict zones. She listened to the translation of the message. "Search for the star child, dead or alive." When Alex finished, the silence in the room was heavy enough to crush bone. Lyra stood up slowly. She walked to the window and looked out at the forest, her forest, the only house she remembered. "My mother left me," she whispered. "She hid you," Alex corrected softly, "to save you. But she did not come back," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "Wolves came back. Wolves always come back. She is Empress. She has ships. She has fire. But she stayed away. She fought," Alex said. "She is still fighting." Lyra turned around. Her eyes were swimming with tears, but they were glowing with a fierce, terrifying light. "Alien princess," she mocked, pointing to herself, "raised by wolves and human nerds." She pointed to him. "We stand between war? Just us?" Alex tried to smile, but it felt like a grimace. "It sounds like the setup to a really bad joke," he admitted. "Or a movie we would turn off after 20 minutes. Lyra did not laugh. She walked over to him. She looked at the smashed phone. She looked at his hands, which were shaking. "You break the talking box," she said. "Why?" "Because he betrayed us," Alex said. "My teacher. He said you were just an asset, a thing to be traded. He said I was useful." He looked down, shame burning his cheeks. "I am sorry, Lyra. I am so sorry. I brought them here. No, my reports, my data. I led them right to you." Lyra studied him. She smelled the guilt, heavy and choking. But beneath it, she smelled of loyalty. He had broken the link to his own pact to protect her. She reached out and took his face in her hands. Her palms were hot, her claws retracted, her touch gentle. "You are not a useful thing," she said fiercely. "You are Alex. You are packed." She leaned in. The distance between them vanished. This was not the accidental closeness of the bunk, or the tentative cheek kiss at the crater. This was deliberate. Lyra, the girl who had never known her own history until 5 minutes ago, sought the only solid ground she had left in the universe. She kissed him. It was clumsy, urgent, and overwhelmed with emotion. She tasted wild mint and the salt of her own tears. She pressed against him, her body seeking the heat of his, trying to fuse her fractured identity with his stability. Alex froze for a heartbeat, his brain short-circuiting. Then, the dam broke. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, his hands tangled in her wild hair. He kissed her back, pouring all his fear, his anger at Holloway, and his months of suppressed longing into the moment. The world narrowed down to the sensation of her, The hum of her implants against his chest, the softness of her lips, the desperate, clawing need to keep her safe. For 10 seconds, they were just a man and a woman in the eye of a hurricane. Then, Alex felt her tremble. It was a tremor of panic, of a creature cornered. She was kissing him like it was the last thing she would ever do. He pulled back. It took every ounce of willpower he possessed. His body was screaming at him to not let go. But his mind, the analytical, ethical part of him, slammed the emergency brake. He pressed his forehead against hers, breathing raggedly. "Stop," he gasped. "Lyra, wait." She tried to chase his lips, making a frustrated sound in her throat. "No," Alex said, holding her shoulders firmly. "Look at me." She opened her eyes. They were wide, swirling with violet light and confusion. "You do not want to?" she asked. Her voice hurt. "I want," Alex said, his voice rough. "God. Lyra, I have wanted to do that for weeks." "Then why stop?" "Because you are scared," Alex said. He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "You just found out your world is burning. You just found out your mother is alive and maybe dying. You are hurting. And I am. I am the only safe thing in the room." He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "I do not want to be a shelter you run to because it is raining," he said. "I want to be the person you choose when the sun is out, when you are not afraid." Lyra stared at him. The wolf in her did not understand. The wolf sought comfort where it could find it. But the woman, the sentient, intelligent queen waking up inside her, understood. He was giving her power. He was giving her the right to say yes, truly yes. Not just out of desperation. She took a shuddering breath. Her heart rate slowed. The frantic energy in her limbs settled. "You are a strange human," she whispered. "You have weird rules." Alex managed a crooked smile. "Yeah, nerd rules. We roll for initiative before we take action." Lyra rested her head against his chest. She listened to his heart. It was racing, betraying his calm words. She knew what it cost him to stop. And that made her love him more than the kiss ever could. "I choose," she said quietly into his shirt. "When fear is gone, I choose you again." "Okay." Alex exhaled, resting his chin on her head. "Deal." He held her for another moment, then stepped back. He turned to the console. The moment for softness was over. The war was still waiting on the screen. "We have a problem," Alex said, his voice shifting back to engineer mode. "Holloway knows I know. The inspection team failed, so they are going to send the real cleaners next. Mercenaries, strike teams." Lyra stiffened. "We fight?" "No," Alex said. "We cannot win a firefight, not against what they are bringing. We need backup, big backup." He pointed to the star chart, to the location of the Empress's fleet. "We need to call your mother." Lyra looked at the screen. "The beacon is broken," she said. "We saw it. The beacon in the crater is broken." Alex agreed. "But you are a living receiver, and I have a station full of high-gain antennas and a soldering iron." He looked at her, his eyes gleaming behind his glasses. "We are going to build a megaphone, and we are going to scream at the stars until she hears us." The next 3 hours were a cinematic montage of high-stakes engineering. They stripped the station. Alex pulled the core processor from the main server. He ripped the copper wiring from the walls. He cannibalized the comms array on the roof, dragging the dish inside and rigging it to the main power coupling. Lyra was the battery. She sat in the center of the room, cross-legged, stripped to her tank top. Alex attached sensors to her temples, her spine, and her wrists. He connected the leads to the makeshift transmitter pile. Okay, Alex said, wiping grease from his forehead. Here is the plan. I am going to feed the station's full reactor output into the dish. It is not enough to reach deep space on its own. That is where you come in. He knelt in front of her. Your implants amplify energy. I need you to take the signal and push it. You have to focus. Think of the glyphs. Think of the song you remembered. Lyra looked at the wires connected to her skin. If I push too hard, she asked. Alex hesitated. If you push too hard, you might burn out or blow us up. So, try for a medium push, a Goldilocks push. Lyra nodded. Medium push. Alex retreated to the console. He hammered the keys. Initiating sequence. Power rooted. The room began to hum. The lights surged, blowing out the remaining bulbs. The only illumination came from the monitors in Lyra's skin. As the power hit her, Lyra gasped, her back arched. The markings on her skin flared blindingly bright, shifting from blue to a pure, burning white. The air in the room ionized. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. The wolves whined and bolted for the sub-basement, sensing the unnatural pressure. "Hold it, Lyra!" Alex yelled over the rising whine of the capacitors. "Focus. Do not let the fear take it." Lyra squeezed her eyes shut. She felt the energy of the reactor pouring into her, cold and heavy. It wanted to explode. It wanted to be a weapon. She thought of the crater. She thought of the face she had seen in the memory. She thought of Alex standing between her and the dark, refusing to kiss her until she was safe. She did not scream in fear. She sang. It was a mental vocalization, a projection of pure intent. "Mother, here. I am here." The transmitter fired, a beam of coherent energy, amplified 1,000 times by Lyra's biology, punched through the roof of the station. It shot into the night sky, tearing through the cloud layer. Outside, the forest was bathed in an aurora-like glow. The trees cast long, dancing shadows. The beam was visible for miles, a pillar of violet light connecting Earth to the heavens. Far away, in a black SUV speeding down the logging road, the strike team leader looked out the window. "Target acquired," he muttered into his radio. "They just lit a flare. Drive faster." The voice of the director crackled back. "Secure the asset before the sky falls." Back in the station, the equipment sparked and died. Smoke curled from the console. Lyra slumped forward, the light fading from her skin. Alex rushed to her, unhooking the leads. "Did it work?" she rasped, coughing. Alex looked at the telemetry on his backup tablet. The signal had punched through the interference. It had gone deep. "Now we wait," Alex said, helping her sit up. They sat on the floor, leaning against the ruined server rack. The station was dark, smelling of ozone and melted plastic. Lyra looked at Alex. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear. "If she comes," Lyra said quietly, "if she is Empress, will she be scared?" "Probably," Alex said. "Emperors usually are." She looked at Alex's messy hair, his torn shirt, his glasses held together with tape. "She will not like you," Lyra stated matter-of-factly. Alex laughed, a sharp bark of sound. "You think?" "Mom, Dad, meet my boyfriend. He is a species we have not made first contact with yet. He lives in a bunker, and his net worth is negative student loans." Lyra poked him in the ribs. "And he is a nerd," she added. "And he is a nerd." Alex agreed. Mothers rarely approve of nerds, especially alien space queen mothers. "She is probably going to vaporize me just for touching you." Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder. "I will bite her if she tries," she promised. Alex smiled, but his stomach was twisting. It was a joke, but it was also the truth. If the Empress came, she would take Lyra. That was the deal. He was saving her to lose her. Suddenly, the ground shook. It was not an earthquake. It was a sonic boom that rattled the fillings in Alex's teeth. He scrambled to the window. High above, the clouds were parting. A shape was descending. It was massive, a jagged, gothic silhouette of dark metal that blotted out the stars. It was burning, flames licking along its hull, battle-scarred and terrifying. The Empress's flagship. At the same time, movement caught Alex's eye at the tree line. Floodlights cut through the darkness. Armored vehicles were smashing through the undergrowth. Black-clad figures were spilling out, moving in tactical formation toward the station. Alex grabbed the tranquilizer gun, though he knew it was useless. He looked at Lyra. She stood up. The exhaustion vanished. The feral princess returned. Her eyes began to glow again, not with the soft light of the beacon, but with the hard, dangerous light of the predator. She grabbed a jagged piece of metal piping from the debris of the transmitter. "They are here," she said. "Both of them," Alex said. He stood beside her, a nerd with a dart gun and a girl with a pipe, standing against an empire and a conspiracy. "Ready?" Alex asked. Lyra bared her teeth. "For a pack," she said. Alex nodded. "For a pack." The silence that fell over Sector 7 was not the natural quiet of the forest. It was an electronic suffocation. One moment, the station was humming with the sound of cooling fans and the distant thrum of the transmitter. Next, the air pressure dropped sharply. The monitors, which had been displaying the chaotic but hopeful telemetry of the signal they had sent to the stars, blinked out in unison. They did not fade. They were strangled. Alex tapped the keyboard. Dead. He checked the emergency battery status. Dead. He looked up at the ceiling. The hardwired lights were out, leaving them in a darkness so absolute it felt heavy. "Jamming field," Alex whispered. "Military grade. They just killed everything with a circuit board within a 5-mile radius." Lyra did not need the screens. She was standing by the heavy steel door, her body vibrating with a low-frequency growl that matched the rumble coming from the throats of the 3 wolves flanking her. The fur on their backs stood up in jagged ridges. "Metal smell," Lyra hissed. "Many boots. Not quiet." Alex scrambled in the dark, his hands finding the edge of the desk by memory. He fumbled for the one piece of tech he knew would still work, a shielded, solid-state data drive he had encased in a lead-lined pouch weeks ago. Paranoid about solar flares. He ripped the drive from the port. He shoved it into Lyra's hand. Her skin was hot, feverish with the adrenaline of the hunt. "Listen to me," Alex said, his voice low and urgent. "This has everything. The recordings of the signals, the files from my company proving they sold you out, the map of where your mother's ship is." Lyra clutched the drive, her claws digging into the protective casing. "We fight," she said. Alex grabbed her shoulders. "No. If this goes bad, if they take me, you run. You get this to your mother. She needs to know who her enemies are. She needs to know what Earth did." Before Lyra could argue, the door to the station did not open. It disintegrated. A shaped charge blew the hinges inward. The heavy steel slab slammed into the far wall with a sound like a thunderclap inside a bell jar. Smoke, thick and acrid, billowed into the room, carrying the blinding white flash of stun grenades. Alex shielded his eyes, coughing. He grabbed the modified fire extinguisher he had rigged earlier that afternoon and hurled it toward the breach. "Fire in the hole," Alex yelled, though it was more of a terrified squeak. He triggered the remote detonator on the extinguisher. It was not filled with foam. It was packed with powdered aluminum and magnesium filings he had scraped from the workshop floor. Flash crack. The improvised flashbang detonated, turning the smoke into a blinding strobe light. Screams of surprise echoed from the doorway. I did not specify my build for PvP. "But here we are," Alex shouted. Diving behind the overturned heavy metal desk, the room erupted into chaos. Black-clad figures poured through the smoke. They moved with the precision of a kill team, their helmets equipped with thermal vision that cut through the dark, but they had not accounted for the wolves. The alpha female hit the first trooper like a furry cannonball. The man went down, his rifle clattering across the floor, screaming as jaws clamped onto his Kevlar-protected arm. The two younger wolves flanked the second man, snapping at his legs, using their weight to drag him down. Lyra moved. She did not need weapons. She was the weapon. She leaped from the top of the server rack, clearing 10 feet of air. As she descended, the implants in her arms flared with a violent violet light. She struck the ground, and a shockwave of kinetic energy rippled out, knocking 3 troopers off their feet. She was a blur of motion. She snatched a rifle from a soldier's hands and bent the barrel in half with a shriek of tortured metal. She spun, her legs sweeping out, catching a helmeted head with a force that cracked the visor. Alex was busy playing defense. He was crawling under the floor grates, popping up to roll homemade EMP grenades, hollowed-out soda cans packed with copper coils and capacitors toward the soldiers' electronics. "Eat static," Alex yelled, tossing a can. It detonated with a magnetic thrum, shorting out the night vision goggles of the advancing squad. The soldiers stumbled, ripping their helmets off, blinded by the sudden darkness. But there were too many of them. A second wave breached the rear ventilation shaft. Repelling lines dropped from the ceiling. Alex felt a cold, sharp sting in his neck, a taser barb. His muscles locked up instantly. He fell from his crouch, twitching uncontrollably, hitting the concrete floor with a sickening thud. "Alex!" Lyra screamed. She turned, her eyes blazing with white fire. She raised her hands to unleash a blast that would have leveled the building, but a voice cut through the chaos, amplified, cold, and mocking. "Do it," the voice said. "Use your power, and I will put a bullet in his brain before you can blink." Lyra froze. The smoke cleared slightly. A tall man in sleek, unrecognizable tactical armor stood over Alex's twitching body. He had a heavy pistol pressed against the base of Alex's skull. The wolves snarled, crouching to spring, but laser sights from a dozen rifles danced on their chests. "Stand down," the commander ordered, "or I start skinning the dogs." Lyra stood amidst the wreckage of the station. Her chest heaved. The light in her skin pulsed erratically, a visual representation of her panic. She looked at Alex. He was drooling slightly, eyes rolling back, fighting the paralysis. "Run." Alex gasped, the word barely an exhale. The commander chuckled. He kicked Alex in the ribs, hard enough to elicit a groan. "We are taking the boyfriend," the commander said to Lyra. "He has become a very valuable asset. We need a technician who understands your unique biology. And if he refuses to cooperate? Well, the human brain is fascinating to dissect." He looked at Lyra, his visor opaque. "You can run. Princess, go chase your mother's ship, but know that every step you take away from us is a piece of him we send back to you in a box." The commander signaled his team. "Move out." 2 soldiers grabbed Alex by his jacket and dragged him out the ruined door. He looked back at Lyra, his eyes pleading with her to leave, to save herself. The soldiers retreated, firing suppression rounds at the floor to keep the wolves at bay. They vanished into the night, dragging their prize with them. Lyra stood alone in the ruined station. The silence returned, but now it was the silence of a grave. She walked to the door. The cool night air hit her face. High above, the sky was changing. The clouds were glowing with a reddish hue as atmospheric friction announced the arrival of something massive. her mother. The Empress was entering the atmosphere. Lyra looked up. She could feel the presence of the ship in her bones, a magnetic pull calling her home. If she ran to the landing zone now, she would be safe. She would be royal. She would be gone. She looked down at the tire tracks in the mud. The scent of Alex's fear and his blood lingered in the air. Her wolf instinct screamed at her, packmate taken, packmate hurt. Her royal logic whispered, the Empire is at stake. You are the heir. Lyra closed her eyes. She remembered Alex pressing his forehead to hers. She remembered him refusing to kiss her until she was safe. She remembered him standing between her and the world with nothing but a broken phone and a terrified heart. She opened her eyes. They were not the eyes of a scared girl anymore. They were the eyes of a predator who had just decided on a kill. She whistled. The 3 wolves limped to her side. The alpha female was bleeding from a graze on her flank, but her eyes were steady. We hunt, Lyra said. She turned her back on the sky and sprinted into the dark forest, following the tire tracks. The conspirators had set up a temporary forward operating base in an old logging clearing 3 miles south. It was a rush job, prefabricated barracks, a portable generator, and a perimeter of razor wire, but it was heavily guarded. They assumed the alien girl would run for the ship. They assumed she would prioritize her survival. They did not understand that they were not dealing with a civilized royal. They were dealing with a wolf. Lyra did not attack the front gate. She and the pack moved through the dense underbrush, circling the camp downwind. She watched the guards patrolling the perimeter. They were nervous, constantly looking up at the burning sky where the flagship was descending like a falling star. Lyra pointed to the generator humming at the edge of the camp. She looked at the Alpha. Distract, Lyra commanded. The Alpha melted into the shadows. Moments later, a terrifying, blood-curdling howl erupted from the east side of the camp. The guards spun around, raising their rifles. Contact east. While their backs were turned, Lyra cleared the razor wire in a single, silence-defying leap. She landed in the shadow of a supply truck. She moved through the camp like a phantom. She found a technician smoking a cigarette outside a communications tent. He was young, shaking, staring at the sky. Lyra grabbed him, one hand over his mouth, the other pinning him to the corrugated metal wall. Her eyes glowed inches from his face. "Where is he?" she hissed. The technician's eyes bulged. He pointed a trembling finger toward the central modular building. Lyra looked at his terrified face. He was a pawn, just another scared human caught in the gears of the machine. "Sleep," she whispered. She applied pressure to the carotid artery. He slumped unconscious in her arms. She lowered him gently to the ground. "Power is what you choose not to destroy," she thought, hearing Alex's voice in her head. She reached the central building. She could smell Alex inside. He smelled of pain, antiseptic, and that stubborn, spicy deodorant he wore. There were 2 guards at the door. Lyra did not use stealth this time. She walked out of the shadows, her hands raised, palms open. The guards blinked, startled by her sudden appearance. "Freeze!" Lyra smirked. Her implants surged. She clapped her hands together. A shockwave of compressed air and sonic energy exploded outward. The guards were thrown backward through the flimsy door of the building, their armor crumpling. Lyra stepped over them and entered. It was a makeshift lab. Monitors lined the walls. In the center of the room, strapped to a metal examination chair, was Alex. He looked bad. His left eye was swollen shut. His shirt was torn. Wires were attached to his temples, and a large needle was sitting on a tray next to him. He looked up as Lyra entered, squinting through his good eye. He let out a wet, wheezing laugh. "You are late," Alex croaked. I was just about to tell them the secret to faster-than-light travel is thinking really happy thoughts. Lyra rushed to him, her hands trembling as she ripped the straps from his wrists. She tore the wires from his head. "Stupid," she whispered, cupping his bruised face. "Stupid, brave nerd." "I knew you would come," Alex whispered, leaning into her touch. "I am supposed to be the one protecting you, but you keep rescuing me. It is hurting my ego." "Hush," Lyra said. "Ego later. Run now." She pulled him up. He stumbled, his leg dragging. "Wait," Alex said. He pointed to a server rack in the corner. "That is the hub. That is how they are talking to the rebels. All the comms, all the deals." Lyra looked at the door. "We go." Alex shook his head. "No. The drive I gave you in it is just my files. That is their files. We need it. We need to burn them down." "Lyra, legally." Lyra looked at him. He was barely standing, but his eyes were fierce. He was still fighting the war the only way he knew how. She nodded. She grabbed the secure drive from her pocket, the one he had given her, and jammed it into the server's port. Alex's fingers flew across the terminal, bypassing the encryption with a speed born of adrenaline and vengeance. Copying. "Copying," Alex muttered. "Got it. And delete original. Oops." He yanked the drive out. "Now we go?" Lyra asked. "Now we go." Alex agreed. They stumbled out of the building into chaos. The camp was in an uproar. The wolves were inside the perimeter now, tearing through tents and scattering supplies. The guards were firing blindly, panic setting in as the sky above them turned a violent shade of purple. The Empress's flagship had broken the cloud layer. It was colossal. A Gothic cathedral made of starship metal, 3 miles long, hanging in the air above the forest. Gravity engines hummed with a sound that vibrated in the chest. Earth's military jets were screaming overhead, tiny gnats buzzing around a dragon. The conspirator commander emerged from his command tent. He saw Lyra and Alex limping toward the tree line. He saw the massive ship blocking out the moon. He grabbed his radio. "Execute Protocol 0. He screamed. "Make it look like an invasion. Fire the kinetic charges." He wanted to start a war to cover his tracks. If Earth's military thought the aliens fired first, the alliance with the rebels would be sealed in blood. A mortar team on the ridge, following the blind order, adjusted their aim. They were not aiming at the ship. They were aiming at the forest, at the crash site, at the girl. Alex heard the whistle of the incoming rounds. It was a sound he knew from video games, but in reality, it was a shriek that tore the air apart. "Incoming!" Alex yelled. He threw himself at Lyra, tackling her to the ground, covering her body with his own. The charges impacted 20 yards away. Boom! The world turned white. The ground heaved, throwing dirt and burning shrapnel into the air. The shockwave hit them like a physical hammer. Alex screamed, his back arcing as hot metal tore through his jacket. Lyra felt the impact through him. She felt his blood spray onto her face. The noise faded into a high-pitched ringing. Lyra pushed Alex off her. He rolled onto his back, gasping. His side was a ruin of torn fabric and blood. A piece of shrapnel the size of a knife blade was embedded in his shoulder. "Alex!" Lyra screamed. He looked at her, his eyes unfocused. Did we win?" he murmured. Lyra looked at the blood, her blood, his blood, the mud. Something inside her broke, and then something ancient and terrible woke up. She threw her head back and screamed. It was not a human scream, and it was the sound of a star going supernova. Her implants did not just flare, they erupted. A column of pure, blinding white energy shot up from her body. It expanded outward, forming a translucent, shimmering dome over her. Alex, and the wolves who had gathered around them. The second volley of mortar shells fell. They hit the dome and vaporized instantly. The energy shield rippled like water but did not break. It was the Royal Aegis, a combat protocol buried deep in her DNA, activated by pure, unadulterated grief. The light from the shield was so intense it illuminated the entire forest. High above, on the bridge of the flagship, sensors shrieked. Royal signature detected. Alpha class. Surface location. The firing stopped. The soldiers in the camp dropped their weapons, shielding their eyes. From the belly of the massive ship, a single beam of blue light descended. A shuttle, sleek and silver, rode the beam down, landing softly in the clearing created by the mortar fire. The ramp lowered. Lyra knelt in the mud, clutching Alex's hand. The shield faded, flickering out as her energy drained away. She was weeping, her tears cutting tracks through the dirt on her face. "Stay," she whispered to him. "Stay. Pack. Do not go." Alex squeezed her hand weakly. "I am still here, just resting my eyes." A figure emerged from the shuttle. She was tall, towering over the humans. She wore armor of iridescent white metal and a cloak that seemed to be woven from shadows. Her face was sharp, regal, and terrified. The Empress. She scanned the clearing. She saw the ruined forest. She saw the cowering human soldier, and then she saw the girl. Lyra stood up, her legs shaking. She stood between her mother and Alex. She bared her teeth. The Empress stopped 10 feet away. She looked at the daughter she had not seen in 20 years. She saw the wild hair, the wolf skins, the feral posture. But she also saw the boy bleeding on the ground behind her. The Empress raised her hand. A holographic projection flickered to life above the clearing, a massive image of her face, projected for all the forest to see. She spoke in a language that sounded like grinding stones and singing glass. "My daughter," the Empress said, her voice booming from the shuttle speakers. Lyra trembled. She reached down and grabbed Alex's hand again, refusing to let go. She looked at the Empress, then at Alex, then back at the Empress. She spoke in English, her voice raw and defiant. "He protected me." Lyra screamed at the most powerful woman in the galaxy. "He is mine. If you want me, you save him." The Empress looked at the human. She looked at the way her daughter stood over him, not like a princess, but like a wolf guarding her mate. The Empress lowered her hand. The holographic projection softened. Bringing the healer drones, the Empress commanded her guard. Lyra collapsed to her knees beside Alex as the alien medics rushed forward. The forest fell silent, save for the heavy breathing of the wolves and the hum of the engine that had crossed the stars to find them. The war was over, but the politics were just beginning. The medical bay of the royal shuttle was a cathedral of white light and silence. It smelled of nothing, no pine, no rain, no blood. Just the terrifying, sterile absence of scent that defined high technology. Alex sat on the edge of a floating diagnostic bed. The shrapnel wound in his side was gone, replaced by a patch of new pink skin that tingled faintly. The bruising on his face had faded to a yellow memory. The alien medical drones, hovering like silver hummingbirds, had knit his body back together in less than 3 hours. But they could not fix the suffocating feeling in his chest. Outside the translucent walls of the bay, the forest was a staging ground. He could see the shadows of massive landing struts crushing the ferns. He could see human soldiers and alien honor guards standing in an uneasy standoff. The door slid open with a whisper. Lyra entered. She had been scrubbed clean of the mud and war paint. Someone had tried to dress her in the silks of the imperial court, a flowing tunic of iridescent silver that shimmered like oil on water. But she wore it wrong. She had torn the sleeves off to free her arms, and she was barefoot, her feet leaving faint prints on the polished floor. She looked like a tiger forced into a ball gown. "Alex," she said. Her voice was tight. "Hey," Alex said, managing a weak smile. "Nice dress. Very shiny." Lyra ignored the compliment. She walked to him, checking him with her eyes, then sniffing the air around him. She frowned at the sterile smell. "Are you fixed?" she asked. "I am fixed," Alex confirmed. "Your mom has good health care. My insurance usually just covers aspirin and a pat on the back." Lyra did not smile. She looked at the door, then back at him. "She wants to see us," Lyra said. "The Empress." The reunion took place in a command tent erected beneath the looming hull of the flagship. It was a space of dark velvet and floating holographic maps. The Empress stood by a central table, up close. She was taller than Lyra, her face sharp and etched with the exhaustion of a 20-year war. She wore armor that looked like it had been fused to her skin, white metal scarred by plasma burns. When Lyra entered, the Empress's composure cracked. She took a step forward, her hands reaching out. "Kalatora," the Empress whispered, using the alien name, "my starlight." She rushed forward to embrace her daughter. It was a movement of pure, desperate motherly instinct. Lyra flinched. She stepped back, her shoulder bumping into Alex. A low, warning rumble started in her throat, a wolf sound, involuntary and harsh. The Empress froze. Her hands hovered in the air, rejected. The pain in her eyes was immediate and devastating. I am sorry," the Empress stammered, switching to a formal, accented English. "I did not mean to startle you." Lyra stood rigid. Her hand found Alex's, gripping his fingers hard enough to bruise. "You smell like a stranger," Lyra said bluntly. "You smell like metal and old grief." "I am your mother," the Empress said, her voice trembling. "I held you when you were minutes old. I sang the song of the moons to you." "I do not remember moons," Lyra countered. "I remember the cold. I remember the pod screaming. I remember the Alpha carrying me in her mouth because I was too weak to walk." She gestured to the tent, to the ship, to the armada in the sky. "You have all this power," Lyra said, her voice rising. "Fire in the sky, ships that eat clouds. But you left me in the mud for 20 years. "I had no choice," the Empress cried. "The coup was sudden. The usurper wanted your blood to seal his claim. I had to hide you where he would never look. A primitive world. A silence in the dark." "A silence," Lyra repeated bitterly. "It was loud in the forest. The hunger was loud." She pulled Alex forward, using him as a shield and a weapon. "This is Alex," she declared. "He has no ship. He has no armor. He is soft and breaks easily. But when the bad men came, he did not hide me. He stood in front of me." The Empress looked at Alex. Her gaze was not hostile, but it was assessing. She looked at him the way a general looks at a strategic complication. "He is human," the Empress said. "And you are the heir apparent. He is Pac," Lyra snapped. The Empress sighed, a sound like a dying engine. She turned back to the holographic map. The red zones of the rebellion were spreading like a virus across the star systems. "You do not understand the stakes, child," the Empress said, her voice hardening into that of a ruler. "The rebels are losing ground, but they are desperate. If they learn you are alive, they will not stop. And if they learn you have bonded with a native of a primitive species, they will use him." She tapped the console. A projection of Alex appeared, surrounded by alien text. "He is a weakness," the Empress stated coldly. "A leverage point. My advisors have already suggested that for your safety. and for the security of the empire, he must be removed from the equation. Alex felt the blood drain from his face. He had suspected it, but hearing it said aloud, with such mathematical precision, was terrifying. "Removed?" Alex asked, his voice steady despite his fear. "You mean killed?" "Erased," the Empress corrected. "We have technology to wipe memory. We can transport you to a secure facility on the other side of this planet. You would live a long, happy life, Alex Mercer. You just would not remember her." Lyra went still. The bioluminescent markings on her neck flared a dangerous, blinding white. "No," she whispered. "It is the only way to ensure he is not used against you," the Empress insisted. "I said no," Lyra shouted. The force of her voice caused the holographic table to flicker. Alex looked at the Empress, then at Lyra. He saw the agony in the mother's eyes. She was trying to save her daughter from the vulnerability of love, a vulnerability she likely knew too well. And he saw Lyra, poised to fight an entire empire with her bare hands. Alex stepped forward. He gently disengaged his hand from Lyra's grip. "Lyra," he said softly. She whipped her head around to look at him. "Do not speak. Do not listen to her." "She is right," Alex said. The words tasted like ash. "Look at the map. Lyra, it is a war. People are dying. Systems are burning. You are a princess. You belong to them." He looked down at his hands, hands that typed code and played video games, hands that were useless in a galactic conflict. "I am just a guy who runs a weather station," Alex said. "I am a liability. If they catch me, they will torture me to get to you. And you would come for me. You would walk into a trap." "Yes," Lyra said instantly. "I will come." "That is the problem," Alex said. He looked at the Empress. "If I go, if I let you wipe my mind, will she be safe? Will she be able to win your war?" The Empress nodded slowly. "She will be unburdened. She will be strong." Alex looked back at Lyra. Tears were spilling from her violet eyes, hot and fast. "Then do it," Alex whispered. Lyra stared at him. She looked at the man who was willing to erase his own soul to keep her safe. It was the ultimate act of protection. It was the logic of the martyr, and she hated it. Her hand moved so fast neither Alex nor the Empress saw it coming. She grabbed the collar of Alex's shirt and slammed him backward against the tent pole. She pinned him there, her face inches from his, her eyes burning with a ferocious, terrifying intensity. "No," she snarled. "Lyra, please," Alex gasped. "You do not get to choose," she yelled. "You do not get to be the hero who dies quietly." She spun around to face the Empress, keeping one hand planted firmly on Alex's chest, claiming him. "You think strength is cutting away the parts that hurt?" Lyra demanded. "You think power is being alone?" She reached into the pocket of her torn silver tunic. She pulled out the data drive, the lead-lined block Alex had given her in the station. "You want to see strength?" Lyra asked. She slammed the drive onto the holographic table. "Play it," she commanded. The Empress hesitated, then gestured to the console. The drive spun up, the tent filled with voices, and it was the recordings Alex had stolen. The voice of Director Vance from the corporation. The voice of the rebel warlord. The detailed plans to trade Lyra for engine schematics. The coordinates of the ambush. The betrayal of Earth's own government. But then, there was more. Alex had added something before they escaped the base. It was a montage of their time in the station. Video logs of Lyra learning to speak, audio of her laughing at a movie, thermal footage of them sleeping back-to-back with the wolves. The final file was Alex's voice log, recorded the night he decided not to report her. "Until I know more," I am going to protect her. The silence in the tent was absolute. Lyra leaned over the table, her hands flat on the glowing map. He did not erase me, she said, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. He did not trade me. He did not use me. He saw a monster in his woods, and he gave her a blanket. She looked at her mother. You want me to lead? You want me to be an empress one day? Then listen to me. Wolves do not cage their own, and they do not leave the pack behind. She pointed to Alex. He is my pack. If you take his mind, if you touch him, I will not fight your war. I will fight you. The Empress stared at the data stream. She looked at the evidence of the conspiracy, a web of lies that spanned 2 worlds. And she looked at the human man who had done what her entire royal guard had failed to do. He had kept her daughter alive and whole. The Empress slumped, the regal posture failing her for the first time. She looked incredibly old. I was trying to protect you, the Empress whispered, from the pain of loss. I am not afraid of pain, Lyra said. I am afraid of being empty. Lyra walked back to Alex. She took his face in her hands, checking his eyes, making sure he was still there. Do not ever try to leave me again, she threatened softly, or I will bite you. Alex let out a shaky breath, leaning his forehead against hers. Understood, he whispered. No leaving. Only staying. The Empress watched them. Slowly, a look of calculation returned to her face, but this time, it was not the calculation of a general sacrificing a pawn. It was the calculation of a statesman seeing a new opportunity. This evidence, the Empress said, tapping the drive, it implicates the rebel leadership in dealings with a primitive, non-aligned species. That is a violation of the Galactic Concordat. It would cost them their legitimacy among the neutral systems. She looked at Alex. And it implicates your Earth leaders in treason against their own kind. Alex nodded, stepping away from the pole. It blows the whole thing wide open. If we broadcast this, the rebels lose their funding, and the corporation goes to prison. The Empress straightened. She smoothed her armor. Then we shall broadcast it, she declared, but not from the shadows. We will do it in the light. The royal shuttle was converted into a broadcast stage. The holographic emitters were tuned to the universal frequencies, capable of overriding every screen on Earth and every receiver in the local star cluster. Lyra stood in the center. She refused to wear the full court regalia. She wore the silver tunic, but she kept her bare feet and her wild, unbound hair. Beside her stood the Empress, and just behind her, to the right, stood Alex, wearing a clean shirt provided by the ship's fabricator, looking terrified but resolute. 3, 2, 1. The air shimmered across the planet. Screens hijacked by the alien signal flickered to life in Times Square, in Tokyo, in the living rooms of bewildered families. Lyra's face appeared. She did not speak like a politician. She spoke like a survivor. People of Earth and citizens of the Empire, she began. Her voice was translated instantly into 100 languages. My name is Lyra. I was born in the stars, but I was raised in the mud of this forest. She told them the truth. She spoke of the crash. She spoke of the wolves who saved her when the technology failed. She spoke of the fear and the cold. And then she spoke of Alex. She pulled him into the frame. This is a human, she said. He had every reason to fear me. He had every reason to sell me, but he chose trust. She looked into the camera, her violet eyes blazing. There are those who want to trade lives for engines, who wants to treat worlds as assets. We are here to say that the time of shadow games is over. She presented the data. The files streamed across the screens of the world, Emails, bank transfers, voice logs. The conspiracy was laid bare in high definition. The reaction was instantaneous. On Earth, the revelation that a shadow corporation had nearly triggered an interstellar war for profit sparked mass outrage. Protests erupted outside corporate headquarters. Governments scrambled to disavow the conspirators. In the Empire, the neutral systems, seeing the dishonorable conduct of the rebels, pulled their support. The coup began to crumble, not through force of arms, but through the loss of honor. When the broadcast ended, Lyra slumped against the console, exhausted. The Empress placed a hand on her shoulder. It was a tentative gesture, but this time, Lyra did not flinch. "You speak well," the Empress said, "better than the diplomats." "I speak the truth," Lyra said. "It is easier to remember than lies." The Empress looked at Alex. "We cannot leave things as they were," she said. "Earth is no longer a secret. It must be protected. And my daughter?" "She refuses to return to the capital without you." "She is stubborn like that," Alex said fondly. The Empress offered a faint, rare smile. "Therefore, I have a proposition. Lyra must learn to rule, but she clearly needs to remain close to her pack, and Earth needs a voice in the Empire to ensure this does not happen again." She gestured between them. "An ambassador," the Empress said to Lyra. "And a liaison," she said to Alex. "You will be the bridge. You will keep the gate open." Alex looked at Lyra. It meant a life caught between two worlds. It meant politics, danger, and scrutiny. But it meant they would be together. "I accept," Alex said. "I accept," Lyra echoed. 6 weeks later, the forest had begun to heal. The scars of the mortar fire were being covered by aggressive, genetically accelerated moss growth, a gift from the Imperial terraforming team. The dynamic of Sector 7 had changed. The old concrete bunker was still there, but it was now joined by a sleek silver spire of alien design. It was a joint outpost. Human scientists and alien researchers walked the grounds, exchanging data pads and awkward glances. But the woods still belonged to the wolves. It was late evening. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold. Lyra and Alex lay on a blanket on the roof of the old bunker. It was their neutral ground. Lyra was wearing a mix of clothes now, jeans she had decided she liked, and a shimmering top of alien silk. Alex was wearing his old flannel shirt, but he had a new pin on the collar, the crest of the royal house. A wolf, one of the yearlings now grown, was curled at their feet, chewing contentedly on a synthetic bone. Lyra rolled onto her side, propping herself up on one elbow. She traced the line of Alex's jaw with her finger. "You are quiet," she said. "Thinking of equations?" Alex smiled, catching her hand. "No, just thinking that my performance review is going to be weird this year. Strengths, interstellar diplomacy. Weaknesses, still bad at filing paperwork." Lyra laughed, the sound vibrant and free. "The Empress says you are doing adequate." She teased. "For a nerd, high praise." Alex deadpanned. He turned his head to look at her. The fading light caught the bioluminescence in her skin, making her glow softly against the twilight. She was breathtaking. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His hand trembled slightly. "What?" Lyra asked, sensing the shift in his mood. "I am still a little terrified," Alex admitted. "I wake up sometimes and think the ship is going to leave, or that you will realize I am just me." Lyra's expression softened. She moved closer, pressing her chest against his, letting him feel the steady, powerful thrum of her heart. "You are not just you," she whispered. "You are the one who stayed." She leaned down. Her hair fell around them, creating a curtain that shut out the outpost, the ship, and the galaxy. She kissed him. It was not like the desperate, frightened kiss in the station, and it was not like the chaste kiss in the crater. This kiss was slow. It was deliberate. It was an exploration of territory that had finally been declared safe. Alex's hands moved to her waist, pulling her flush against him. Lyra sighed into his mouth, her body relaxing completely, her feral instincts quieting into a deep, purring contentment. It was a kiss that tasted of the future, of years to come, of learning each other's languages until they were one. They broke apart, breathless, foreheads resting together. Alex ran his thumb over her bottom lip. "I love you," he whispered. The words felt huge, but necessary. Lyra smiled. She nipped his finger gently, a playful wolf kiss. "I love you, packmate," she replied. She rolled onto her back, pulling him with her so they lay side by side, looking up at the sky. The first stars were appearing, high above. The lights of the flagship twinkled like a new constellation. "You protected me until my mother returned," Lyra whispered, her voice drifting into the cool night air. She reached out and interlaced her fingers with his, gripping tight. "Now," she said, "we protect each other." The camera of the mind's eye pulled back, up, past the two figures on the roof, up, past the sleeping wolves and the humming alien spire, up, through the trees and the clouds, until the forest was just a patch of green on a blue world, floating in a sea of stars that no longer felt quite so lonely.